Good morning, and thank you all for being early birds. I'm so delighted to kick this day off with this incredibly interesting panel. And I really love the title of this panel because roots and wings, some stories have roots that are so deep that they seem to be from one very specific patch of earth almost, whereas some stories have wings that span entire continents, languages, and sometimes even generations. So I'm so delighted to be in conversation with this incredibly diverse panel. And I wonder if we can all start by talking about examples, because I think this is going to be a conversation that's going to be led by what travels and what doesn't, and I think examples are a great way to start. So why don't we all start with an example of a book from your territories that actually has traveled, and maybe you can tell us why you think that is the case. Why don't you give us all?
Thank you very much, and nice to be here again. I was born on a border, actually, so internationally substantial to what I am. And when I was creating the publishing house, my own publishing house 23 years ago, I didn't decide to found a special series, French, foreign, etc., but everything is a mix. And the writer I'm going to talking about is Haitian, which is a good example, I think, because she doesn't live in France, but she writes in French. And the book I mentioned has been translated in many languages, more than 10. Won a Femina Prize, which is one of our big literary prizes. The title is Moonbath, published in 14. And it's a very local book, actually, really very local. Haiti is a tiny island in the Caribbean Sea. It's a very good example, a very good fabric for the global south, because Haiti is independent since 804. So the question of the post-colonial is really very important there. That is just for the frame. The book is just very local. It's a story of a woman who is dying on the shore and who tells what happened to her. And what happened to her is that she was a very, very poor peasant girl, and she fell in love with the master of the land. And we think, okay, she will be a victim, one more, and not at all. She became the master of the house. And so this book, very local, is about female empowerment, actually. And I'm sure this played a very big role in the universality of the book and the fact that it interests all abroad. But I also am strongly convinced that a good book is a book who travels. I think I'm publishing what we call upmarket, literature, high-level literary fiction. And it's for me about form and about content. How language, who is the instrument, you know, when you are a musician, you have to master an instrument. When you are a writer, to me, you have to master the language. It is your instrument. And for me, a good book is a piece of art who must travel. So sometimes when we are publishers, we are publishing what we can. We don't have masterpieces every 2 days and even every year. So we know that we have to just settle a kind of ground who gives maybe the future masterpieces. So I was lucky to find this writer. Her name is Yannick Lahens. She's Haitian, and she published a lot of books and is internationally well known.
Thank you. So, okay, that example gives us one answer, which is maybe it's thematic relevance. So, Mélody, let's hear yours.
Hi, pleasure to be here as well. Does it work? Yes. I'm from Flammarion, and so the book I wanted to speak about is Love Me Tender by Constance Debré, which we published in 2021. And I don't have the exact number because we keep selling the rights, so I think we must be around 15, 17, because I know we did a deal for Czech rights like a month ago, so it keeps growing. And it's also like an example of a very personal story who manages to get like the universal scope in the end. So the author, it's autofiction, so the main character is basically the author. And she tells a story of how she had like this very traditional life, like very bourgeois almost in Paris, with a husband, a child. She was a lawyer. And progressively she decided to break free from this, the society shackles a bit, like this very, like tight lifestyle. And progressively she gets a divorce, she quits the job, and she decides to only live from her writing. And so her life becomes more and more spare, like she loses the possessions and she loses everything that she had before, the comfort of this very bourgeois lifestyle she had before. And when the story starts when she announces the ex-husband that she actually became a lesbian. And the husband, I think it is a bit like vexed in his and so he decides to cut the access to the son. So she loses the custody of the son. And the whole book is basically two parallel stories where she is determined to find her own truth. She's determined to be true to herself and to really have this very honest life with herself, but at the same time trying to recover the contact and the custody of the son. And both things are not always very compatible. So it's really a journey of self-truth, and written in an extraordinary, very powerful style, very dry, very incisive. And so this is a very personal story, but I think that it really touches on very universal subjects like motherhood, but also identity. We all, I think, sometimes feel a bit trapped in our lives, and so I think that's also why you can also connect with the character, even if you don't always agree with. Sometimes, when I read the book, I was just, I just had my son. I was like, fight for your son. I was really getting angry, like reading the book, and so sometimes I was like, like not always agreeing with the choices, but you can't only acknowledge like the power of the path that she decides to take. And she's becoming international phenomenon. She's published in English by Serpent's Tail and by Semiotext in the US. And we keep getting interest, like it's progressive, it's continuing to grow. Now she's really, she was in the English European world, now she's really getting translated into the Eastern Europe. Yeah. So it's really like progressively growing. Yeah.
So from there, I think maybe it's the subject matter that might be
the style as well. The style is very
okay. Style and subject matter.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay, lovely. Let's hear your example.
Well, thank you. In our publishing house, the catalog is open to the world, so we're very happy when books travels. And we have a story in this catalog because we published a few years ago writer from Saili, which so north of Cameroon, and she's written in French, and she was well known in Africa, but absolutely not in the world. And when I decided to publish her, it was it was a daring move because she's Fulani, so she's Muslim from Africa. The book is about 3 women who lives in this Fulani phase, family, and a very small word, polygamy, with polygamy, very traditional, a lot of tradition, Muslim and so on. And the book was about violence against women. The book is, the name of the book is The Impatient, the woman, impatient woman in a place where patience is one of the best, most important value for the woman. And the writer is Jaili Amadou Amal. She's so when we did it, we won an award, so Concours des lycéens, with the students. And I think it's the reason of the success, because the thematics match with many questions the students have in their own word, in the vision of the word, especially the students which have something to do with Africa in France, and so tradition and so on, even in France. So we published, this book was very well sold, 500,000 copies, so it's a huge success, imagine. And it's one of the reasons we sold in many languages. First, before the success, we already sold in Germany and in Italy to two publishing houses we used to work with. And before the success too, we sold to HarperCollins, so printer, so in US, and it was, yes, a story of. It's not because of the success. It's just before.
Yeah.
Because a story of friendship between you see different things together. We have together with the publisher, between publisher. But after that, we publish in more than 25 countries, and we sell once a month. So every time, even now. So I think the success of the internationally travel is because of especially the award.
So relevance
Yes.
to young people also.
And the young people, and the thematics, violence against women. So, yes.
Yeah.
I think
Okay.
so.
I'm also sensing a pattern here. You've all talked about women writers in a particular context, and you're talking about how that certainly appeals to. We know women read more than men, so that certainly is one of the reasons that I feel is going to travel. So, John, are you going to give us another woman?
I should have thought of that. First of all, thank you for inviting me to this panel. It's an honor to share the stage with these intelligent and beautiful French women. I love being surrounded by French women. Also, as a hopeless romantic, I guess all of us here at the festival in the book industry are hopeless romantics. And me as an editor and not a rights manager, I might be the most hopeless romantic of them all. As Sabine was saying, good books travel. That's my point of view in general. But as an example of some Norwegian titles that had really traveled the world, I was planning to mention Jostein Gaarder's Sophie's World, which is on the Chinese curriculum in school. But I'm not going to mention him. I'm going to mention a recent author called Oliver Lovrenskij. He was published in Norway 2 years ago with his title, in English it's called Back in the Day. He was 19, and he was already writing about when he was younger. That was the title in Norwegian, When We Were Younger. And it's a street narrative from a guy who has been nearly killed, engaged in violence, sold drugs, done drugs, without his father, without living with his mother. A street narrative with the language that was insanely precise as a poetic street language, slang. All the publishing houses in Norway were running towards this title. When it came in, it was breathtaking. And it had nothing to do with the universal subjects. It had nothing to do, it was extremely local. It's from the east side of Oslo. And it was just brilliant. And it makes me full of hope that titles like that travel. And it immediately traveled to, I think it's 20 countries. So that would be my example, because in the broad scale, the local, I always believe it's local. It has to be local in order to be universal. So yeah.
So specificity, that's also interesting, right? Because universality doesn't mean everything is the same and everything is bland and everything is like homogeneous. There's a lot of specificity. There's a lot of heterogeneity in the specific as well. So that's great. So these are incredible examples. But being in the books business, we also know that other factors play a role. A good book travels well, a good book sells well. We know this in our gut. But we also know that there are these external factors that can come in. So one factor we all know is literary prizes. A big prize can completely change the game for how many language rights are sold all over the world. So maybe you'd like to talk to us about how the role that even literary festivals and literary prizes have to play?
Yes, sure. We are all working in our offices and meeting. You are not meeting readers directly. We need people who do the job in the chains, in the book chain. I mean, half of my time is devoted to meeting booksellers, even if I have distribution representatives, commercial teams, etc. But this is very important. So in this in intermediaire people, mid people, I don't have the word in English, sorry. You have, of course, booksellers, journalists, and this is national, but internationally, what is playing a big role is, of course, literary prizes. And even what I noticed, one of our main literary prizes, the Prix Goncourt, it has been mentioned here by Emmanuelle. When you have a writer who is even in the first selection, there are 3 selections, something happens in France, in the community of the rights community, scouts, agents, and foreign publishers who ask for the rights. And it happened to me to sell in 8 or 10 countries when I had a writer shortlisted, which doesn't arrive every year, but which sometimes luckily arrives. So this is very important. What is really very important too, to cross the borders for books, is festivals. I have an example. It's not obvious, I discovered a Northern Irish writer in Ljubljana, in Slovenia, because just you meet people. It's a place for networking. I was just in a party at the festival, as we have wonderful here, and just discussing with Jan Carson, who is this Irish writer, and just telling, I love Ireland, I'm publishing now Brian, Claire Keegan, etc. And so she told me, of course, they are master for me, and come to my reading tomorrow. And I listened to her reading the first chapter of her book, who won a European Literary Prize, so both. And I was just seduced to ask her for the book, and this was very direct from me, editor-publisher, to the writer. So this is very important. But I think what is also really important to me to discover new books and new languages are translators. And for instance, Claire Keegan has been recommended me by her the woman who today is her translator, because these are the people who know very well the source language, the country where the works grow, and who are able to also identify in the French market, when it's in that sense, the publisher who might be the best to defend the book. So, of course, last point for me, when I I go to international fairs, at the very beginning of the publishing house 20 years ago, I hated to go there because I was meeting agents who pitched the book, and I found this on very little interest. And year after year, I discovered that I will be able to meet all these independent or non-independent, but publishers who share the same taste of literature, idea of literature than I. And so we are a small, informal community all over the world, meeting each other here, for instance, or in London or in Frankfurt, etc. So this is very important about human relation in publishing.
So for the purposes of discoverability, we certainly need these little things as well, like prizes, festivals, book fairs, and translators who act as almost scouts for us in other languages. Mélody, I wonder if you can talk to us about, are there certain gateway languages that help you sell rights across the world? Like, for example, is there one language that opens out the rest of the world for you?
Yeah. Well, an obvious answer would be English. In foreign rights, we have like this kind of two stages. Like first, the book is going to be published, so we speak about it in advance to other publishers outside, like abroad, and we speak about it. We sell or not the rights, and if we're lucky, we sell the rights in English. And then another thing is going to happen is like when the English text gets published, we have like a new wave of interest. Like people are going to get back to us like, I saw that this book was published. You are the original publisher. Can we have a look? Can we look at the English text sometimes also? And then there's also, apart from English, we also have like those more regional or like geographically associated countries, like. If a book gets translated in Asia to Japan or China, then for us at least it's going to be an argument to speak about it again to all the countries around it. Same for Scandinavia, same for Eastern Europe. We're going to use it as an argument, and because publishers know each other, and usually, like for example, a Spanish publisher is going to say, okay, this publisher in Italy is similar to what I do, so of course they're going to actually kind of look at each other, like kind of say, okay, what did they publish? So who's the rights owner of this? So they're really kind of, I think publishers everywhere in the world kind of, check the market and what's being published everywhere to have ideas and get inspired. Yeah.
This is, I mean, certainly something that I, of course, have noticed as well. And maybe when we move into the audience question part of this conversation, if there are Indian language publishers here, I would love to hear from all of you as well about whether English plays a similar role for the numerous Indian languages that publish in India as well. Emmanuelle, I would love to hear about, I know that some countries work through literary agents, and literary agents can be very important for selling foreign rights. And in other countries, there are foreign rights departments, and so and this is also a very like market-driven, territory-driven thing. So I wonder if you can talk about this from the French perspective.
I'm French, so I don't like to work with so many agents. I do it when it's impossible not to do it, but I prefer to work directly with the publishing in publishing. In the publishing field with the publishers and the editors. It's, I think it's a way of thinking, especially in France. But for us, as Sabine told us, it's very important to the human relationship, especially, yes, in the festival and the book fair. I was like you, Sabine, at the beginning. It was horrible for me to go and to see there were so many people, and especially the agent. I didn't know anything about that just because I didn't come from the publishing field, so I had to learn. And it was very, very interesting for me to meet publisher from, especially independent publisher, but also a publisher from the group, to make special relationship with them, and to work in a long-term relationship. And it's the same when I come, like now, in a new territory. The first time I come to India. And so how you can do, you have to find your way. For me here, it's very special because I'm working with an editor. She's an editor for the publishing house, Judith Hoyer. She's here, and she knows very well India. So I want a lot of time when I arrive here, and it's very interesting to find the way to meet the people, and we find some common. Something common between publishing, different publishers all over the world. And I think with this, we can do many things. And when there's an agent, it's different because you have someone between these people. And sometimes it doesn't work, sometimes it works, but it's so often more difficult. So I love to be in publishing field, especially in the international book field. But yes, when we have special relationship with a common, universal common way of thinking, this small community you told about, Sabine. Yes.
And I mean, it's the human connection, as all of you have indicated
yes.
in one way or the other.
With good books, good value, and something we defend, and we can something which give us the enthusiasm, the desire of fighting and defending our value, international value. In human beings, and especially when the world is changing a lot, and sometimes in a bad way.
And I mean, most of the European publishers have a long tradition of great foreign rights departments. And so, like, the literary agenting scene is as new to the European publishers as it is to us here in India as well, for example. Jon, I would love for you to weigh in on the role that government support and cultural policy and cultural organizations play in helping literature from our territories travel to the rest of the world. And I think in Norway you have had a great history of this as well.
Yes, very much so. And also, I would like to comment on the agent business that you talked about, Emmanuelle. That in Norway we don't have. We don't work with agents for the national market. As an editor, I go directly to the raw material in terms of reading first drafts of some potential novel or poetry collection. We go in on a very early stage sometimes and really can spend time on developing things that don't necessarily will go on the huge commercial market. And all of this is enabled by the very unique system that we have for financing literature in Norway. We are 6 million people, and in the 60s when this was established, we were probably only 3.5 or 4, I don't know. But the market was overflooded by English pulp fiction, and the government found out that we had to do something in order to make our own writing thrive. And the main thing is something called the normal or the common agreement among the Publishers Union and the Writers Union. They have decided on a system that gives all the writers, from the crime fiction writers to the poets, the same royalty agreement, so that it's a cross solidarity financing of the field, which is a beautiful thing. And also the fixed price for 1 year, as you talked about also, Sabine, in France, the no sales tax, and also a system where the government buys 1 copy of each book for every library in the country, which basically makes it I mean, we don't make a lot of money on it, but we don't lose too much. So we can take the chance on finding new voices and developing books from a broad spectrum of genres.
So the government buys one copy of every book published in Norway for every library?
There's a system where there's a jury that is sitting over a couple of years and then changes. That is evaluating the books published every year, all of them, and you can be rejected, but it's a quite broad spectrum of things that are bought, and then it's only 603 copies though, so it's not the big business, but it's enough so you don't drown. I mean, it would change the entire field if we didn't do this. And the point is that this system has enabled writers in Norway to develop their craft over time. I mean, Per Petterson, with his 6th novel, he broke the sound barrier in the US market. It's about a guy who's sitting in his cottage, throwing woods on the fire, thinking about his past, his family life, his father, all the universal themes, and it really touches your heart.
I mean, this is very, I feel very envious hearing just about the libraries, of course. I mean, I think we have a similar system here. It's just that at last count, India publishes like 19,000 books a year. So it might not be so easy to do something exactly the same. I also think like we're all, I mean, as publishers, most of us are in for-profit industry, so we certainly cannot expect to be subsidized for the work that we do. But at the same time, support comes in all of these other formats, like promotion of art and culture and literature. So that is definitely interesting. Before we open out to the audience, I began by asking you all for book-specific examples of what travels. So let's close this conversation out, and I'd love to hear if there is a genre that you think doesn't travel. Is there a specific genre that you think does well in your home territories, but doesn't necessarily travel well? And that's fine. I mean, not every book has to travel, right? So let me...
Of course, not every book has to travel, and not every book has to sell. Because if we are lucky in Norway and in France, because we have strong cultural policies, and I wouldn't have been able to create my publishing house without the fixed price. And we have this strong policy. We are invited here thanks to the French embassy. Thank you, Julia, to you, her team, from the book department at the embassy. And this is very, very important. Because if there is a strong cultural policy, it's because the market is very violent. It's just to try to help us to resist to the violence of the market. Because we are giving a very idyllic landscape of publishing, because we are actually creating, we all four symbolical value, but the reality of the market is to create economical value. For instance, for the moment in France, we have two tycoons, just big financial heads who bought the big two groups, and this is very dangerous because we are fighting against a monopolistic situation which would avoid us to go on working like we work. So my long answer to your quick question is sometimes it happens book doesn't travel, not because that was the topic, not because they are not good, but because there are too much books and it's impossible just to do even if we are committed for each one, and particularly me, because I'm publishing 10 books a year, but sometimes I do the economical balance from one year to another, not from one book to another. I have just nightmare years for sometimes my average is just falling from my turnover falling from 50%, and sometimes I'm just praying all the gods of the Indian pantheon. So a book will sell again, and the balance will go in the right direction. So,
yeah, Mélody.
No, there are many examples, but one I think of, because it's something that I'm usually told in meetings, is commercial fiction from France. Because we have big best-selling authors in Flammarion, and some sell. I'm not saying it's not systematic. Like we sell some of them, but like I'm thinking of Gilles de Gardinier, for example, who's published at Flammarion, sells like 100,000 of copies for each of the books he publishes, and nothing outside, nothing abroad. It just, and when I speak about it, about him to publishers, he says, yeah, we have our own, or like we don't. It's not really what we're looking for when we go to a French editor. It's not really, we prefer, like we're looking for more literary. Yeah. But I mean, of course, you have to take this with a pinch of salt, because we also publish Virginie Grimaldi, who is like a international, and she's also in the commercial fiction. So it's not systematic, but we have a lot of commercial authors selling very well. And yeah, like I guess other countries do this segment also very well. So the competition is hard. Yeah.
And what about you, Emmanuelle?
Yes, as Sabine told you, is we never know. It's a balance from a nightmare to a dream. It depends, and some books can't be sold and can't be sold, can't travel, but some good books could travel, have the potential of travel and to be sold. But are not, and we do exactly the same job for every books. So I think we just need a bit of luck. We don't know. It's surprising sometimes when everything, all the stars are aligned and you don't know exactly why. You can analyze later, but when you are in the job and you just do our job, every time the same, you don't know what happened. So to publish is always a risk, a important risk for the publishing house, and choosing a book is a daring move, because we never know. So yes, it's
and do you
it's
have
alive.
A category that doesn't particularly travel well?
Again, I think that everything can travel. But you mentioned earlier the autofiction in France that didn't travel well for ages, until the Norwegian guy named Karl Ove Knausgård came. And again, he was so strange that people was curious about his banal life. But that did very well everywhere except in France, because the French had done that for years. Also, I think again that I mean, in the system, in the Norwegian system, that we have a very high level of patience with things that aren't necessarily going to work out. Like you say, it's a big risk, but in Norway the risk is a little less. But I think the irrational field that publishing is, in terms of fiction writing at least, it's nervous, and the nerve is a resource that we use.
Look, we could keep talking for ages, and I really want to hear more about these specific examples, but we have 5 minutes left, and I do want to bring all of you in. So yeah, if there's a mic floating around, I specifically would love to hear from any language publishers in the room, Indian language publishers in the room. Is there a mic? Yeah. Okay. Okay, let's go to the gentleman.
Not a publisher, sorry, but I'm a reader, and caveat this by saying that I don't know much about the way that books get discovered and written and published, but curious about the process by which a good book, especially from a first-time author, gets discovered. And do you all feel like if a good book gets written, it'll eventually find its way into the hands of a reader? So in other words, are you confident in the efficiency of the market, if you will? Or do you feel like there are many undiscovered gems out there that somehow just did not make it for luck or for what have you? Thank you.
Definitely gems are overlooked. We tend to tell ourselves that masterpieces won't be overlooked, but they will do all the time, I think, unfortunately.
I think a very good book always finds its path to readers. I'm romantic.
No, I know. Sorry. It's a matter of timing. Like it takes time sometimes, and it's hard to convince authors that authors are impatient. They want to be translated, and sometimes you have to tell them, maybe it's not now. Maybe it will be in 1 year, 2 years, 5 years. It may. Sometimes you're convinced it's going to happen. It's just you don't know when.
I was, given that you're editors and publishers, I was wondering if you have any pet peeve against first-time authors that are trying to get published. Any pet peeve that you have about maybe if you knew this, it would make their life easier, your life easier. A pet peeve about first-time authors that you have as editors and publishers.
About the author himself or themselves.
Yeah, as in about the process, about what they might not know that you, being insiders, understand that many first-time authors don't, perhaps. This is something that could help if they knew.
I would say that a book that you can talk about will find a reader. If you know what it is, and you can tell it to the reader or an agent. I mean, the pitch, it sounds a little... I was talking about my romantic views, but, you know, there's a pitch, and it works. It sums up the thing. And that is a good thing. I mean, very many debutantes in Norway, at least, are coming to us probably a little too early with their thing. It's all over the place, and it's, you know. But if you know what it is, it's a better chance that the reader will do as well.
No, and also, I mean, you also have to, for first-time authors who don't know yet how it's happened well, you also have to have big expectations, because of course every author thinks that their book is incredible. Sometimes it is, but and they think that of course it's going to get translated. But of course, like there's no way. Why? Of course, and sometimes it doesn't, and you have to deal with the disappointment. And because of course, when a publisher, an author goes to a big publishing house, especially, they have like, oh my God, they're going to do so much for me. Like it's going to work for me. Of course, like they have the big marketing team, the big translation, like the rights department. Of course, it's going to. And sometimes it doesn't work so fast, and we have to deal with the disappointment, because of course there's like the dream, the initial dream, and you have to deal with that. Yeah.
Do we have time for more?
Don't quit your day job.
Okay, I've been told that we don't have time for more questions, but I am sure our panelists will be happy to take your questions separately. So thank you all for being a wonderful audience, and thank you to my wonderful panelists.